The Legacy of Servant Leadership Lifetime Achievement Award is intended to recognize only those extraordinary airmen who have deeply influenced and significantly contributed to the vision, direction, and growth of the Order of the Arrow. They have faithfully demonstrated a lifetime of servant leadership and, through their daily example, illuminated and reinforced the significance of the values found in the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. From its inception, the Order of the Arrow has always set out to change the lives of young men by fostering in them a life purpose of leadership and cheerful service to others. Ed Pease was one of those young men, and his life was changed by his Order of the Arrow experience. As a result, he has invested 5 decades, nearly his entire lifetime, to serving Scouting and the Order of the Arrow. To tell us a little more about this exceptional man, our friend, please welcome Robert Fudge, who is the longest tenured trail crew director at Philmont Scout Ranch. That wonderful program, the Philmont Trail Crew, began during Ed's chairmanship of the National Order of the Arrow Committee. Robert Fudge.
Edward Allen Pease was born in Terre Haute, Indiana. He became an airman in 1964 and has since had a profound impact on our order and its legacy. Ed is among Scouting's most decorated Eagle Scouts, having received the Distinguished Service Award, the Silver Buffalo, and the Distinguished Eagle Scout Award. Ed has served as a camp director, associate lodge advisor, section advisor, council president, and president of the Philmont Staff Association. He was appointed to the National Order of the Arrow Committee in 1984 and served as its chairman from 1993 to 1999. As chairman, Ed led the order through 7 of the most transformative years in its history. Professionally, Ed served as general counsel to Indiana State University, as well as vice president to the university and a member of its board of trustees. Ed went on to serve as a state senator, and in 1997 was elected to the United States Congress. Today, Ed serves as the Senior Vice President of Governmental Affairs for Rolls-Royce, North America. He continues to serve on the National Order of the Arrow Committee and the BSA National Advisory Board. Ed's life has been a testament to the power of servant leadership. Anyone who meets Ed gains an immediate sense of the humility and sincerity with which he undertakes every task. Because of Ed, generations of young people have been inspired to live up to their true potential. Ed seeks to instill within every young person he meets a belief that there are no limits except those they place on themselves. No matter who you are, no matter where you came from, no matter what label people try to give you, Ed has spent his life working so that you too can be as happy and healthy and wise as anyone else. Few men have engaged this task with more sincerity, with greater personal commitment, and with less fanfare. Take a look.
Ed's legacy of servant leadership goes back to 1969, when he served as an aide to our founder, Dr. Goodman, at that year's national conference. Since then, Ed's contributions to our order have been, in a word, legendary. As chairman of the National Committee, Ed led the development of the order's first long-range strategic plan and steered over $1 million of funding in support of national and council high adventure programs. Ed repositioned the order as Scouting's National Honor Society and started the OA Trail Crew and Wilderness Voyage programs. The values Ed learned in Scouting extend into his personal and professional life. Ed led the integration of African Americans into the Pi Kappa Alpha fraternity. As the National Pike president, his leadership on issues of inclusiveness and diversity were historic in scope, resulting in his election as president of the National Interfraternity Conference over all 75 men's fraternities in America. Still today, young men in colleges all across the United States know Ed and admire his impact on their everyday lives.
Ed, my name is Josh Thompson, and I became the first African-American Pike here at Ole Miss, and I would like to thank you for who you are and what you do.
As chairman of the National Order of the Arrow Committee, Ed took steps to cement the role of youth leadership in our national programs. Ed appointed region chiefs and their advisors to the National Committee for the first time. In 1999, he held the first ever National OA Leadership Summit at Colorado State University in order to involve every lodge chief in the country in the planning and execution of upcoming national events. Professionally, Ed has mentored countless airmen who have gone on to hold leadership roles in Congress and the White House. Today, Ed's contributions are intimately interrelated and inextricably intertwined with the Order of the Arrow as a modern-day institution. Ed is, in every sense, a living example of what is meant when we say, "For he who serves his fellows is, of all his fellows, greatest."
In many ways, over tens of thousands of days, our Order's legacy has been shaped by Ed's leadership through service. It's a distinguished honor to recognize a distinguished Scouter, dedicated servant leader with more than 50 years to our brotherhood. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends of Scouting everywhere, please join me in welcoming and thanking Ed Pease. Where's Ed? Oh, come over here. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Come here.
I hadn't seen those slides.
I'm sure that's
all
good.
choked up.
Yeah. Oh, you did?
I'm going to get myself dressed.
Just a little historical note. The sash that Ed's wearing tonight was originally worn through the lifetime of Ian Goodman. And so he has to take it off pretty soon. Ed, on behalf of the Boy Scouts of America and the National Order of the Arrow Committee, it is my high honor and distinct privilege to present to you the very first G-clay of Joseph Satari's newest painting, Visions of the Founder. It is numbered, and it represents the celebration of the Order of the Arrow's 100th anniversary. Not only does it perfectly capture our Order's legacy of servant leadership and visions of the future, it captures your own legacy of servant leadership and your tremendous vision as well. Let's go look at it, Ed. Yeah, you got number one.
Thank you.
God bless you. Good luck.
Thank you, guys.
You want to go?
Thank you, Ray, and thank all of you for the honor you've bestowed and the kindness you've extended to me tonight and throughout my life. The friendships so freely offered, so eagerly received, so profoundly sustaining that I wince at the inadequacy of finite speech to explain the infinite Creator whose face I see in every one of you and whose hand moves ever among us through the simple miracles of brotherhood and cheerfulness and service. But others, knowing my dilemma this evening, suggested an alternative, one which at first puzzled me, but the more I considered it, the more I understood how perfectly right it was. For in introducing to you tonight the original oil painting by noted scouting artist Joseph Satari, commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Order of the Arrow, I am able to share the story in the painting as a way of explaining what the Order has done and continues to do for all of us, and what it has meant and still means every day for me. When I first met Dr. Goodman, I wasn't much younger than he is in this painting. He was then considerably older. With a few other of the luckiest airmen in the country, I was assigned to escort him and Mrs. Goodman and Colonel and Mrs. Edson at the 1971 National Order of the Arrow Conference. The biggest challenge we faced in trying to keep him on schedule was the crowds, which would instantaneously erupt whenever someone spotted him, kind of the 70s version of a flash mob. It wasn't so much that the crush of people kept us from moving, though there was occasionally some of that. It was that Dr. Goodman absolutely reveled in talking with young people, in asking them questions, in listening to what they had to say, in signing their sashes, beaming the whole time because of the wide eyes and the breathless smiles as they walked away clutching their greatest treasure. We would pull him along, and within minutes another young airman would catch his eye, and we'd be waiting again. Later in the day, usually around dinner time, we would have some time with him ourselves. And though he'd spent the day in scores of conversations, it seemed, when I talked with him, that he listened like I was the only other person in that room. That he considered and valued what I said. That he was genuinely glad to have the time to spend with me. Can you imagine? I've long ago forgotten many of the things we talked about those evenings, but at his side I learned one of the most valuable lessons of my life. I may not recall the time and place that you and I talked. I may not even recall the specifics of what we talked about, but I will never forget the way you made me feel. Dr. Goodman made all of us feel that what we said, what we thought, who we were, mattered. I suspect the scouts in this painting felt that way as they listened to the stories of scouting, his legends of the Delaware, the power properly understood and deployed of brotherhood and cheerfulness and service. I suspect that he was as delighted in their responses as they were in listening. And though I doubt that he knew then how these ideas might ultimately be manifest, I know he was absolutely certain that the values espoused through the order have the power to change lives and eventually the world for the better. Joe Satari has captured those notions in the Scouts on the other side of the Delaware through ceremonies and NOACs and high adventure, through the things of the Spirit lived joyfully in the out of doors. From years ago in the dim ages, through the things we do today, to the dreams we have for tomorrow, the passage of time is a continuum which the Order of the Arrow began with Dr. Goodman's vision, progressed through iterations like the ones depicted here in these vignettes, and disappears over the mountain into the far beyond. Or if you think of it in linear terms, there is a line that began with Dr. Goodman, running through the years to the present day. Each of us finds himself somewhere on that continuum. For some, it's a single point in time, an election or an induction perhaps. For others, it may be a year or two, depending on the circumstances of the day. And for still others, it's a lifetime of shared experiences, shared values, shared lives. But each of us is somewhere on that continuum that existed long before us and will endure long after we're gone. Along the way, our lives will be touched by many, and there will be many whose lives we touch as well, often without even realizing. I remember yesterdays after campfire with ceremonialists as we packed away the clothing and the candles, and in those days, the kerosene. The first time I was invited to stay after dinner for coffee with my lodge advisor, who was himself a legend, the sign which we all knew meant that I'd earned his approval and was at last myself becoming a man accepted among men. Or the look that was a combination of surprise and satisfaction on the face of a young scout whose 10 thumbs finally yielded to my scoutcraft instruction, and his first successful bowline brought a smile as broad as if he'd just won the lottery. Somewhere along that continuum, my role, like it has for the other adults here, and will someday for the youth among us, transitioned from learner to leader to advisor and coach. I'm not quite sure exactly when that happened, and it wasn't marked precisely by a 21st birthday, but it came, and I adjusted, and along the way there were others who helped me learn those ropes as well. Scouting, and especially the Order, gave me opportunities and opened expectations far beyond the walls of the Sealyville Volunteer Fire Department, where Troop 200 met every Monday night at 6, not 6:03, 6. It gave me and those scouting brothers I grew up with in my troop, on camp staff, and in the old Kickapoo Lodge, the chance to test the wings of leadership and accept the challenge of responsibility for myself and others. There were campfires and call-outs, fellowships, conclaves, high adventure. Crickets in the evening, wood smoke in the morning. Manifestations of our principles through programs and people. What makes all of these things so special for me is not that they're unique among scouting experiences, but precisely because they are not. I have been privileged, as each of you has been privileged, to be part of a movement bigger than any of us. To share in the common experiences of a tradition we received and who understood that we are simply their stewards, who hold them for a while and then pass them along to those who will follow down the trail. That continuum, which began long before us and stretches out to infinity, is the combination of every experience of every brother who's ever worn our sash. In those times that I catch myself a bit daunted by the responsibility I have to pass it along better than I found it, or perhaps more accurately than it found me, I remind myself that this great continuum of shared values and shared experience is more than just that linear progression, but it's an embrace of the spirit that wraps itself around each of us, making us stronger as the beliefs we share are magnified through the bonds of brotherhood. Earlier this summer, I attended the funeral of my scoutmaster. "90 years old, and one who in his day could have stepped right out of a Norman Rockwell painting or given Sheriff Andy Taylor lessons in the wisdom of simple people and ordinary things. I went to my first funeral with him, of another scouter well known in our council, but of a generation before mine, and who I didn't really know. I knew, though, that he was important to my scoutmaster, and that was good enough for me. And like he did so many times with us, Mr. Manis used the occasion to talk about things like I felt when talking with Dr. Goodman, things that mattered. And he told us that when his time came and he prepared his last personal assessment, if there were any regrets in his life, he wanted them to be for things that he had done and not for the things he failed to do. He lived that aspiration till the day he died. So did Dr. Goodman. And because of you and the many who walked our trail before you, I have been blessed to live my life looking ever onward, never over my shoulder, curious always as to what lies just over that next horizon. For that, and for the friendships we've shared along the way, I am and will always be profoundly grateful. Aho.